Hey, what's up, friends? Ray with Docket Timberworks. How y'all doing? So this week's wood turning project is not quite sure. It was originally intended to be a double-sided cutting board. Didn't come out that way. It's silver maple, which is a little bit soft for a cutting board. So it's kind of a tray or a serving board, whichever you choose. It's multi-purpose, I guess. It was finished with some Yorkshire grit abrasive paste and polish, and then some 100% pure tung oil. So yeah, just follow me along in the video and check out how the process of this came about, the decisions I made while I was turning it, and let me know down in the comments what you would call this. Is it worth making more of these? You know, for trying to maybe possibly sell. I'm thinking it's almost you could almost use it like a charcuterie board and then also as a serving tray. So let me know what y'all think. All right. Like I said, check out the video, see how we got here and how we turned this. All right. Y'all have a good one. All right, friends, let's get this hunk of wood up here on the lathe and we'll true it up and we'll make it into a blank and then we'll start working it. So I cut this silver maple down to about 13 inches round, and I believe it's 1.5 to 2 inches thick. And I chose the 13 inches because I work with a 14 by 20 Rikon variable speed lathe. It's a good lathe, but it's not big enough for what I want to do. I already need to upgrade, unfortunately, because I'm always maxing this thing out and I'm doing goofy stuff like trying to put a 13.5 inch blank on it to try and get maximum yield. Alright, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to take my bowl gouge and I'm just doing push cuts across the outside to get it trued up this way, get a lot of vibration out. But since I did cut this on a bandsaw, I was able to start out at like 700, 800 RPMs because it's already pretty much imbalanced and it was pretty even thickness too. Okay, now we're going to work on cleaning up this face, and this is just simply a peeling cut. I've got the handle dropped down, and I've got the flute closed, almost closed. It's at like an 11 o'clock position, and I'm just going back and forth, getting some of the unevenness out and truing up this face. I don't have a death grip on the gouge with my left hand. I simply have basically the weight of my hand down on it and just moving it, letting it slide back and forth across the tool rest. You gotta love that run back right out the get-go. So all I'm doing is I'm hollowing out a little cavity right here for my jaws to fit in. And y'all know how I go. I don't like measuring stuff. I don't like to take the time out to grab a tool. And it'll bite me in the butt here in a minute because, you know, the old adage, measure twice, cut once. Well, I didn't do that. I'm going to end up, you know, cutting twice and measuring once. Okay, now what I got here is I've got my little bidan. It's not a very big one. I want to say it's 3/8. I'd have to check and make sure, but it's a Robert Sorby, and what I did was I ground, you know, it's got a pretty radical bevel on it. It's pretty 45 degrees. It's grabby and catchy if you let it, but then instead of just a flush 90 degree, you know, left to right angle, you know, a straight square angle, I shaved about 10 degrees off maybe, so it's more like 80, so that I could come in here and hit the recess and put a dovetail on my recess. But as you can see, I didn't measure, and you know, I got the wrong size. I did the groove too big for the standard 2-inch jaws. So now I have to go and expand that recess out some and make it fit my 4-inch jaws. And I knew better because just at a quick glance, you could almost eyeball that with at least the one-way tail live center, that it's almost 2 inches. Like if you was to hold a pencil out at the edge of it and draw a circle in there, it's almost a perfect 2 inches. So I went way too big, but not quite big enough for the 4-inch jaw. So rework, you know, add in 15 minutes already to the project. And what I found is if I take the time out and I raise that tool rest, that it's really easy, even with the tailstock in place, to get a mark and a groove with my dividers. It's a little bit more difficult if I keep the tool rest down at the center point. So it just works easier, and I never have catches, and I hardly ever dig in the right side. So I like doing that. I just bring the tailstock or the tool rest up a little bit higher than center, and I've got a good stable working platform to work around the tail center. Tailstock. Okay. So we've flipped it around. It's got about 1/8 of an inch deep recess, and I've still am holding it with the tail center, tailstock. I don't know why I keep saying it. And I'm back to doing those peeling cuts with the flute nearly closed. And I just have the tool angled down, and I've got my hand just giving downward pressure, and I'm slowly just walking back and forth, and you can feel it. You don't even need to see it, but you can feel it when you're cutting material and there's unevenness. You can just, you know, I stopped it and you can see that there were still chunks of gray from the original dried wood. Now, what I've got now is I've got my scraper. And this is my influence by Richard Raffin and Tomislav Tomatic, their shear scraper, or what Tomislav calls his refiner. And it was just a piece of cheap Amazon tool stock that I shaped with an angle grinder and refined on my wheel. It's sitting at about a 45-degree nose bevel, and at first, you know, I sped up through it. I was using just the CBN wheel burr, but this is silver maple. It's punky and it's prone to tear out. So what I did off camera was I raised a burr with a carbide rod, and that cleaned up the surface a whole lot better. Okay, and now we're back to cleaning out that outside. Both the front and the back face are pretty much cleaned up and true. Now we got to get this the actual circular shape cleaned up. There was one small flat spot that I had left, and now I'm trying to clean it up. And it's real punky here. There's a lot of tear out on the end grain. But here's another view of my scraper, my shear scraper, that I like to use to try and clean up. It works pretty good on soft maple. And here I'm doing a shear scrape. If you can see, my tool is only anchored on the corner. And what I did was I really rounded that corner off with a belt sander so that it glides across my tool rest real easy and lets me get that shear scraping angle instead of a flat traditional style of scraping. And you can see that it's putting out really fine ribbons, and it takes a small amount of material off, and it's a really good surface. This is almost like what most guys would use their Ellsworth or Irish grind type with the long wing of their bowl gouge. So in the original iteration of this project, my thoughts were a double-sided cutting board. One that you could, you know, chop some meat on one side, then quickly and easily flip it over and chop some vegetables on the other side without having to go clean until your cooking project's done. We've got cutting boards at home, and they can be kind of a pain in the butt. You know, we've got just the cheap ones that you pick up at Walmart, you know, the little bamboo rectangles. They're kind of a pain in the butt, especially if you get a little bit of water or something underneath them. They almost get a vacuum, and they're hard to pick up. You almost have to slide them over to the edge of the counter. So what I'm doing here is I'm rolling a set of beads to give you a grip to pick this cutting board up. And this was what made me change the design, because I'm rolling the beads and I'm making them symmetrical, but I didn't count for my recess. So on the backside, you can't see it. It's where the chuck is in a mortise recess. It's in 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch deep into the wood. So when I go to reverse this, I have to take that much material off, and now the beads aren't symmetrical anymore. So that's why I changed the design. That, and it also clicked in my head somewhere in that point when I was doing it, that wait, this is soft maple, this probably isn't the best wood for using as a cutting board. Okay, now what man, when I watch other turners do this, this seems like the simplest thing in the world. And they just kind of run their gallet across, or they run their scraper across, and they got a nice flat surface. Not the case with me. Oh man, I fought with getting this flat for I don't know how long. I almost took it out. It was that it was that frustrating, man. It took me a lot of passes to get this thing flat. There's got to be a better way, an easier way. I don't know what it is. I just got to work through it. If any of y'all got some tips and advice, let me know, because how I did this was not the way. I mean, I just kept checking, putting a rule on it, checking, taking a little bit off here. I mean, this process of doing this, oh my gosh, it could have took 45 minutes if I didn't speed this part up. This was a time sink. Here I am. Look, I'm trying to get a pencil and find the highest points and mark those out. The problem is you take one pass and they're gone. So, it was difficult. You'll see me struggle with this, but it is what it is. I finally worked through it. But here you get to see some of those nice real spiderweb fluffy ribbons from that shear scraper, and that's got a rolled bird. You know, it's not a grinder bird. Like I said, I took a carbide rod and rolled the burr on it, and it's a smooth finish on that maple. You can see the chatoyance when it stopped, just, you know, from a tool finish. Okay, so now we get to sanding. I spent a while on 120 trying to get that just perfect, you know, no shallow, because I wanted a smooth top. I want it to be perfectly flat, so it took me a minute. And so now I'm still under the same impression that I wanted a cutting board. Still thinking that way. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting a juice groove in there with my bowl gouge, because you know, I did not leave it angled. You know, because like ideally, if it was just one good in-grain cutting board or something, I would probably put a slight peak in the center so that all the juices would run down towards the juice groove. But on this one, I wanted it to be double-sided, so I didn't want it to rock. And that's why I went with as flat a surface as I could. And it took a lot of time. But I mean, in the end, it still is a very cool. The juice groove is functional because when you hold it upside down or right side up, your thumbs and your fingers fit in it, along with the side beads. It's really comfortable to hold. It came out well. I'm actually kind of proud of it, even though most of it was intended for a complete. It was totally intended for something completely different. You know what I'm saying? And throughout the recording, I don't know, man, my camera's messing up. I got to find out a different recording system. This GoPro type deal, it overheats, the batteries die. It's just not ideal. It's got a nice wide angle, like you can see right here, and it's beautiful footage. It's wide angle, it's rock steady. It's got stabilization in it. you know, because it's meant for like action filming, like skateboards and stuff like that. But it just, man, the batteries just eat up and it overheats in the shop. So, but this was just Yorkshire grit abrasive paste and then Yorkshire grit microfine polish. Because I wanted, about now I think is when I was like, okay, well, we're going to try and make a tray or a charcuterie something or other with it. My thought is to hollow out the back instead of making it flat. So, I mean, this stuff puts on a beautiful finish. Oh, what I did first, though, was I put a coat of tung oil and burnished it in with the rag to kind of heat it up and set it in there to cure. And then I went over with the abrasive paste and stuff. And then what you see me doing right here now is I'm doing my trademark or my signature friction burn on maple. I love to hit that rim in that corner and just give it a good dark friction burn to contrast with the light maple. And I love doing this technique on almost all my maple bowls. I try to give them a nice sharp, it can't be done on a soft rolled edge. It has to be a sharp angled corner. And I did it first on accident. And once I figured out what I did, I use it as like a repeatable signature trademark move for my pieces. Okay, so here we are. Here's the beads rolled. Now my issue is I went too far. I shouldn't have rolled these beads yet, because when I turn this back side off, it's going to eat up a bunch of it. Unless I just leave this rim out here and kind of just recess this and not really have a double-sided cutting board, and have, do you recess it and make it a tray so it's double duty like that, or a charcuterie tray, or this is a charcuterie board and not a cutting board? I'm not sure. What I did, so I don't forget, because I wasn't really talking during the filming, was I put a little bit of 50/50 pure tung oil and citrus solvent, and then I did one coat of Yorkshire grit original. I don't feel the need to go to the polish. Well, if we do it more as a charcuterie board and tray, maybe it will want the polish. Let's go ahead and put the polish on. Let's do it. Okay, so that was some footage recording of me with my camera and my thoughts of the project at the time. And so what I'm doing now, though, is I put the polish on, and now I'm hooking up my vacuum chuck system. And I've got a tailstock adapter that lets me put my chuck with the piece still originally mounted into it, into the tailstock. So I can jam that up against the vacuum chuck, and now it's perfectly centered and ready to go. I don't have to try and mess around with trying to find center, get it aligned, or anything else. That little tailstock chuck adapter is a lifesaver. Okay, and what I'm doing here is, again, you know, I'm just walking back and forth with my closed flute and doing peeling cuts, and this is, it's kind of bugging me. And this is kind of a premonition of what's to come, but there's a lot. It should be trued. I trued it up before I put it in the chuck, and nothing's changed. But as I get out towards the edge, it's acting like it's really uneven, and there's a big gap, and it's kind of pulsating. It's almost like it's wood, air, wood, air, wood, air. And my theory is it's the vacuum chuck. This is a TMI holdfast. I've only done a couple of bowls with it, and while the vacuum system itself seems to work great, the chuck itself, one, it leaves marks on my pieces. It leaves rings and circles on my pieces, and I'm about done with it. I might keep it and take off those double O-rings and put a high density foam on it instead. And then my theory also is those O-rings compress and flex, and because what it does is I get a lot of chatter and vibration, like I'm at the edge of a very thin, like 3/8 thick bowl. And it does the same thing. It leaves the same tool marks. If you've ever had chatter marks, and I mean not from a chatter tool, but I mean from going for a thin bowl out by the rim and the bowl's flexing under speed, that's what this thing does. And I mean, look at that thing. It's still 2 inches thick. And I'm getting all this chatter mark and flex, and it drives me crazy during this turning process. I was about done. But so back to what's going on though with the turning. Here I decided and committed to scooping this out. I established kind of a rim, and I'm just hollowing it out with a standard bowl gouge. You see me switch over to my Ellsworth gouge because I've kept that with a 60-degree nose angle, and it's really good for walking along the bottom of bowls. And I can hog this out and still keep the steep walls pretty good. So then I'm still keeping, like, I don't trust the vacuum chuck. I've got, you can see it right there in the corner, that little red box. That's my manifold. That's the system that converts my air compressors, compressed air, through a Venturi system into a vacuum. And I've got it right there so I can keep an eye on that needle and see if I'm losing vacuum. And because, you know, I don't want this chuck to or not chuck, but this piece to fly off and one, hit me in the face, or two, fly off and get damaged and dinged up. So I've moved over to the scraper. Sorry for the shoulder. This isn't the best camera view for this project. I need to move my camera. I thought it was good, but it's not. And so what I'm doing is I've got an end scraper, a square end scraper, and I'm trying to clean up the bottom. And now I'm working the nub away. I'm trying to get it thin, like you would almost remove a tenon. And then instead of, I stopped. I loosened up the tailstock just a hair so that it's not compressing into the piece, and then I just removed the nub. I figured that with a little pull saw. I figured that would be one of the safest ways, and I wouldn't get much tear out in there, like if I just ripped the nub off or something. I figured a nice flush cut would help me out. Alright, so this is just a square end scraper, and I'm kind of just trying to get a nice flat, even bottom. Because again, I want it to be a tray now. So it's got to be flat, and you can't have things rolling around. You kind of want them to stay put if you actually use it as a tray. I want it to be functional and look good. And then, of course, this is also really the first time I've used a flat or a square end scraper. So it's a lot of learning stuff. It's a lot of doing stuff different. It's the first time I've done a tray. It's the first time I've tried to make a flat surface in a normal, like, cross grain bowl orientation. It was a fun project. It was an interesting project. I learned a lot. I couldn't find a small ruler, so I'm using a carpenter's pencil that has a nice straight edge to, get an idea of where the heist points are down here on the inside. Now this portion is really kind of frustrating for me, and I kind of left it in so if you guys can maybe hear what's happening, but I'm getting chatter marks all across it, and you can see, as I'm watching the editing and coming back, I'm not getting rid of ribbons, I'm getting chips. So that's further confirming in my mind that this thing's flexing and acting like it's either super warped, but it's not. This was kiln dried dry lumber that I got from a local sawmill that also kind of specializes in reclaimed Michigan lumber too. So I bought it from him because he follows the same principles that I do about the reclaimed wood. So I feel safe, and I feel I can keep my same kind of slogan and profile with him. So, like I said, it's leaving chips, not ribbons. Even when I come over to my shear scraper now, with that rolled hook burr on it, it's not leaving the ribbons. it's chips. So this thing is flexing and it's out of whack, and oh my gosh, it's so frustrating because I'm like, oh man, this thing's going to be great. It's going to be great. I want this beautiful finish, and it's flat. It's hard to disguise inconsistencies or bad technique on something that's flat. It's got to be perfect. So man, I went back and forth, just racking my brain on how to get this done. Man, see, that should be smooth ribbons right there. Like I said, I love coming back and watching and editing these videos because I get to learn so much during this editing process when I do my voiceover, because I'm get a second look at what happened. And I kind of had that thought in my mind, but now watching this and the lack of ribbons, I'm convinced I got to do something about that chuck. Not the vacuum system, but that vacuum chuck. Because it's not working right, and it made me work way harder than I needed to. This should have been finished an hour, at least ahead of what it took me. I had to speed this up in so many places because I have to work and rework it so much. But, I'm not going to hide my struggles. It's a learning process for me. I'm new at this. I'm trying different techniques, different products. I don't like giving negative reviews, but so far, the actual chuck, it looks like a toilet plunger. It's black plastic, and then it's got 2 O-rings on it. And it's got a aluminum housing that threads onto your spindle. The actual chuck, I'm going to write off as pretty much garbage until it's modified. We'll see if modifying it will improve it. Like I said, taking off the double O-rings and
I'm afraid of that.
Replacing it with high density foam.
Doing is sucking the tunnel.
Oh man, friends, I almost forgot to ask y'all. Please hit that subscribe button, man. It's been 27 minutes into this video and I haven't remembered to ask y'all to subscribe.
I don't know if y'all can see. It's got a couple. It's kind of frustrating. But here it is. It was supposed to be a double-sided cutting board. Didn't come out that way, but now it's kind of it could be a tray or a serving board, charcuterie board, whatever. Soft maple. So I was getting to the thought of, well, maybe I shouldn't do a cutting board since it's soft maple. But see, I did these beads so that once it's on the ground you can still pick it up without, kind of coming in at it. If y'all can see those. And then it's, like I said, it was originally going to be a cutting board, so it's got a juice groove in there, which, I mean, it looks nice. I think you could rock some salami and cheddar on there, a couple of olives. You could put a bunch of olives or pickled eggs or deviled eggs or something in this side if you wanted to go that route. So it's kind of dual purpose. We'll improve them as we go. This is unfortunate. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. See, my problem is I got a 14-inch lathe and I'm trying to get these as big as I can. And the only way to do it is, it's this. This isn't a good seal. I mean, it's a good seal, but it puts indentations on this. So who knows, maybe after putting a couple of more coats of tung oil on there, I'll put some pure tung oil on there. Because what I did was I put 50-50, citrus solvent and tung oil. Then I did abrasive paste over it, and then abrasive, microfit polish. And now I can put full strength tung oil on it. I'll probably let it dry 24 hours and then put a coat of oil on it. See how it does. But yeah, it's an idea. Stuff I'm trying to work with and utilize different tools. Like I said, I wish I had a bigger lathe. Yeah, friction jaws just wouldn't fit. Maybe jumbo cold jaws, but I have a weird size where I think I have 10-inch jaws. They make 12-inch jaws, but you would need the extensions, which put them out to 15, and I don't have the swing. Because, I mean, you can't really go smaller than this. It wouldn't be practical. Nobody's going to want to use it, so I need a bigger lathe. Well, anyways, friends, thanks for checking it out. Y'all have a good one. We'll catch you on the next one.